It goes without saying that civil society thrives best when it is structured and organized by an array of non-coercive social institutions, including families, marriage, church, clubs, unions, and other non-government organizations. And no association or organization regulates human affairs and provides for human needs quite so well as the family. Strong families make for strong individuals and societies, and deter the need for the state to compensate with large, costly welfare programs. The more such institutions shape and inform societal norms and practices, the less the government has to. This is not to say that the government should step in and run human affairs when these institutions fail, but merely that when such institutions are many and strong, the government has no pretext to. Where family norms falter, we face the most fearsome specter of state coercion. For when we dismantle essential family norms, the most likely institution to step in is the state. And when the state tries to step into the role of parents and families, we get cumbersome and intrusive bureaucracies, the kind that not only fail to compensate for the family, but which also require society to foot their expensive bill. In this way, one can see that the fortunes of family and liberty are deeply intertwined. They rise or fall together. So if one opposes big government, the last thing one would want is to dismantle public norms that make for strong families. Parents have inherent obligations to their children, as well as to each other. For example, spouses have an obligation to materially support, care for, and remain faithful to each other. These obligations are not imposed on them by statute, or even necessarily agreed to by contract. They naturally arise when the spouses engage in procreative intercourse. These duties are accompanied by certain privileges too, such as the right of parents to teach and raise their children, to bequeath to those children their moral belief system, to provide for their children's future, all without the interfering paternalism of government intrusion. These duties and privileges philosophically precede and transcend state authority. They exist whether or not a government does. Civil marriage does not create these duties and privileges. It is simply a process by which the state formally recognizes, respects, and on rare occasions enforces these already existing duties and privileges, the same way that the state formally recognizes, respects, and enforces an individual's pre-existing rights to life and property. Marriage and family insulate the individual from government, providing unique spaces of autonomy that state forces are now trying to shrink. Spouses have more discretion in determining the rules of their household than most employers have over their businesses. The only pretext most governments have generally dared to use to invade the autonomy of the home is the physical protection of children from extreme abuse or neglect. This illustrates how the family has so far resisted the state and jealously guarded its boundaries. We do not and should not want the state to abandon the norms by which the state has treated marriage and family as formal units worthy of distinction. We should want the state to acknowledge Richard and Joanna, with their daughters Rebecca and Shauna, as more than just four separate individuals, but as embodying a family unit whose internal affairs are privileged and are to remain untouched absent grave circumstances. If the state redefines marriage to include inherently non-procreative relationships, it would put to rest the idea that the duties and privileges of marriage, including the autonomy of the family in civil affairs, are a natural endowment by nature and nature's laws as a consequence of the procreative union. It would advance instead the doctrine that these duties and privileges are grants of the state and artifacts of political action. This would jeopardize the strength of the family unit in its ongoing contest with the state. Further, if it is true that redefining or dismantling civil marriage will weaken the family, this should alarm civil libertarians just as much as, if not more than, news of a new welfare program or a new economic regulation. Investing our efforts in strengthening family norms will do more for the cause of liberty than perhaps any other cause we can pursue.